I'll say this much, Jordan Peele has a way of making the audience think about what they just watched. I reviewed and deconstructed Us yesterday, and today I'm doing Get Out. They both need a deconstructing. They are both kind of elusive, and they really make you think about what's actually going on. But before I start,
spoiler warning.
This is not a normal review, this is Deconstructing the Narrative, which is a brand new feature that I'm doing on my channel. If you like it, hit the like button. Also, comment down below what you thought about it. You can also hit subscribe. Let's get started with Get Out. We start with a seed. What is it at the heart of this film that everything revolves around, that everything orbits around, that everybody in the movie, not just the protagonist, not just the antagonist, but everybody can provide perspective on? Thankfully, this answer is actually pretty clear. It's the coagular procedure. This, of course, is the weird brain transplant procedure thing that the whole movie kind of revolves around, but you don't know it until the end. What's actually elusive in the movie is finding out who the protagonist is and the antagonist. This is where Jordan Peele once again presents two very solid arguments on to what it is. You can actually see this as the Arbitrage family, as they are the prime movers of the plot. They have a reason for being there. They have a plan of action with steps to do it. Or, of course, you could see it as most others do and say the protagonist is, of course, Chris. The problem with Chris is he isn't a prime mover of the plot. He doesn't really have a plan of action. He's just basically there as a detective figure who's trying to figure everything out because everything feels off. So how do you decide on who the real protagonist is? The real protagonist is Chris, which I wish it wasn't. I think it makes a whole lot more sense if the Arbitrage family was the real protagonist. I think if they kept the alternate ending that they got rid of, they would be the protagonist, but when they changed it, it kind of made Chris the protagonist because of how the movie ends. But more than that, he's the protagonist because he's the only one that feels the imbalance, the inequity, that something is wrong in his world. He's the only one that feels that. Everybody else thinks everything's hunky-dory. Other than being a prime mover of plot, the protagonist's role is to resolve a conflict, to resolve an imbalance. And the only imbalance here is the Arbitrage family doing what they're doing, which makes him the protagonist. So again, Jordan Peele has a weird way of doing what he does, but he does it very, very well. He makes the audience think about what's actually going on here because it's not just an easy dark versus light, good guy versus bad guy. There is reasons behind everything. There is a reason behind the motivations for the bad guys, and there's a reason behind the motivations for the good guys, usually speaking. Not so much here, but he just has a really good way of dealing with it. So I'm giving the seed perfect points, but I'm giving protagonist half points, and the reason why I'm doing that is because from a literary standpoint, the Arbitrage family makes more sense, and they play the role better if they were the protagonist. Having Chris play the protagonist is kind of weak, as he doesn't have a plan of action. He isn't really moving the plot forward. The Arbitrage family is. Next, we look at the main character of the movie, which is also Chris, so he is the literary hero of the film. He's the main character because we see through his eyes for the most part. Main characters provide an alternate perspective in the film that has something to do with their personality, something to do with a personal problem they're having. In Get Out, Chris has a mindset that's all about avoidance, right? He avoids all of his problems, especially when it comes down to race, specifically. When his girlfriend gets pulled over by a cop, he hands over his ID even though he's not driving because he thinks the cop might be racist, and just in case he is, I'm gonna avoid all problems and just give him the ID. No problem. When the family makes slightly questionable racist remarks, he just goes along with it. He doesn't say anything at all. He just has this avoidant personality. That's his worldview. Acceptance when it shouldn't be acceptance. 2 out of 2 for him. His influence character, the person who challenges him the most in this film, is his girlfriend. Rose has more of an actionable personality. When it comes down to race, when it comes down to treating him the way he shouldn't be treated, she stands up for him, she does whatever, which is in, of course, sharp contrast to what she's actually all about, but the idea that she's putting out there, that she's giving to Chris, is not to just give in, to actually fight for what you believe in. By the end of the movie, he does adopt her way of thinking and fights for himself, of course, when it comes down to the procedure. 2 out of 2 for that. Next, we look at the antagonist. The antagonist, of course, is diametrically opposed to the protagonist's goal. If the goal of the protagonist is to get away from the Arbitrage family, of course, has the goal of stopping him from leaving. Here's the issue with that. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for an antagonist to be diametrically opposed to the protagonist's goal when they gave them that goal in the first place. That's where things get a little bit elusive for me. So antagonist also gets half points. So again, we looked at the seed, the issue at hand, which was the coagular procedure that every character can provide perspective on. This, of course, causes an inequity or an imbalance or a disturbance in the force, so to speak, for Chris, who is our protagonist, who sees that this family is just acting weird. So an effort starts to take place to resolve his conflict, which is basically just the arbitrage family. So all he has to do is get out of Dodge. The antagonist's role is pretty simple. Just stop the protagonist from leaving. That is the arbitrage family. They need to finish their mission, so they need to stop him and keep him there. Chris also plays the main character who has this personal problem of accepting the way things are and just letting things go, and he adopts the way of his girlfriend's lifestyle by standing up for himself. And she is the influence character, which makes this as a whole a pretty solid narrative structure. However, there is some weaknesses when it comes down to who the protagonist is and who the antagonist is, as their roles probably should have been switched. Altogether, it comes down to 8 out of 10 possible stars for the narrative structure, which is pretty good. Okay guys, tell me what you thought of Get Out in the comments down below, and as for YouTube, you know you can subscribe to me, hit that like button, and hit the bell to be notified when I come out with my next deconstructing video. Peace out.